Scotty. It's the weekend we've been waiting for the best part of 7-8 months. International rugby is back. Big games. They could be World Cup playoff games, but it's not quite that intensity. There's no form book, but it is the All Blacks up against England. It's Wales in Australia against the Wallabies, a very new look Wallabies side. Obviously the big one in South Africa at Loftus 505, one place two. It's the Springboks, world champions, just a reminder of that, against the world's best team apparently, Ireland.
Yeah.
A reminder of that as well. And then the late one, for those who just love their rugby, Argentina to play the French Academy 50.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to kick off with you. I watched your wonderful video with Scotty. And Scotty's got a feeling about England. Do you have a feeling about England?
I've got a feeling about New Zealand, to be honest. It's not so much about England. I had a look at that All Blacks lineup that Razor announced, and it's a bit Albany bred. I mean, I just look at that. Usually you look at an All Blacks team and you kind of trying to find a weakness in it somewhere. This team, a lot of guys who really need to play their best test performance. I mean, I just feel like England have got a chance. They've only won twice in New Zealand, I think. And if I look at that New Zealand lineup and I look at the cohesion of that England side, even though they do have some changes, I feel like this is a great opportunity for England to bank a win in New Zealand.
What would that do for Razor? All the hype, 7 Super Rugby titles, the man who should have been there, and he gets rolled by England in Test 1.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
but you know he's smarter than that. And yes, you know, I think there's clearly there's consistency in his selection, given that he's rewarding loyalty for those who are playing in Super Rugby.
yes.
Is that a New Zealand Rugby Union charter that he's been asked to adhere to? I don't think so much. I think he's got true belief in his selection, and I think with Damien McKenzie to me is a delight to watch, really is. But the kid only knows how to play one way, and that is heads up football, trying to find space, orchestrate, engineer, manufacture holes, and so. So it's not your archetypal staple at number 10. And I think that concerns a lot of people.
No, totally. I mean, for me,
the ability to pivot on the basis now we need to tighten the game up and play some territory and create some pressure, and that's always been his kind of his weakness.
No, I mean, DMAC is a guy who he's like old Ange Cappuccino from Italy, right? He would start every test for those guys. But New Zealand shouldn't really have to rely on a gambler at 10. And so DMAC
well, that's it. If you're playing poker in international rugby, you can't bluff with a pair of twos, can you? And I think that's what stands out off the page for me.
But New Zealand's very parochial with the media when it comes to Super Rugby. And as much as coaches tell them Test Rugby is not Super Rugby, it takes them 2 tests to find out in the Test season that it actually isn't.
Maybe Razor's getting it out the way.
So DMAC, everyone was just raving about him all season. But he's been around for so long. He reminds me a lot of Elton Jantjies in terms of his career trajectory. He should have made it a while ago, either at 15 or at 10. He was given chances. Mohanga came in and took his chance. Bowden Barrett on the bench. Obviously, it's a statement made there, Scotty, that you were in Japan. We're not going to put you straight in the starting lineup. So you're on the bench, but you could be on in 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. I think Razor is trying to. A big issue in New Zealand rugby is that you cannot play overseas and be playing for the All Blacks. That's something that Razor has to work around. It's one of his limiters, I suppose. And so he's got to reward national form in Super Rugby, etc. And I think he's trying to do that now and take his medicine as early as possible, so that by the time they get to the Rugby Championship, he's filtered the sort of...
Well, they maybe need to go the route that we went when we were so bullish. We don't pick anyone that's playing overseas. Well, we saw what the results they were. We were ranked 7th in the world. We lost to Italy.
We lost to Brendan Fetter's Italy.
Brendan Fetter's Italy. He was coaching us and Italy on the same week, and we couldn't figure it out. They may need to drop a few games for their hierarchy to say, okay, Richie Mohanga, get him back. Let him play.
Correct.
He's in Japan. A guy who's playing in England that's maybe one of their better players, get him back for test matches if you want.
Jamison Gibson Park.
Get him back, 3-year stand down, bring him back for the next World Cup. But if you look at it, the situation there is, and we looked at Rassie when he first came in. there's 250 South African players playing overseas. His thing was, there's maybe 5 who are absolute choices. The rest, if it's a 50-50, I'm going with the local guy.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the way that squad has evolved over the last 6 years, 30% of those players have come back to South Africa to play in franchises here because he said, ideally, I want you here.
Yeah.
They've managed to get the payment structure sorted with third-party payments, national pony payments. And more you've seen the local-based player that's playing in the URC and the Champions Cup starting to become more dominant in the Springbok 23 than the overseas-based player. Because when he first came in, 20 of the 30 were based overseas at that time. Now it's about 10 of the top players that are based overseas. The rest are coming back. Because Richie Mohanga not playing Test rugby because of a rule like that it's just outrageous. The Wallabies have also been one of the biggest losers in not picking overseas-based players. When you think of the Arnold brothers that were playing in Europe, several other players who've just been very good, and then they picked some level nobodies, and they take a beating.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Australia is a country, just because of the dynamics of their national sports setup, they can't really afford to do that because the Wallabies pick up the guys that are 6th in the pecking order after basketball, Aussie League, Aussie rules, tiddlywinks. I don't know. The rugby players are really at sort of the bottom of the barrel. So you almost need to hide your best players in European rugby so that you can pick them for the Wallabies and they're not playing rugby league.
Well, Ireland's got the best. They don't pick anyone based overseas. They just bring them in.
Okay. Those guys are ahead of the game.
Wales. I mean, they were at one stage. It was like you've got to be in Wales to play.
That's still the case. I think. Obviously, there's Gatlin is trying to manoeuvre that. It's an issue. Globally, it's an issue, isn't it? Because you cannot fault the player wanting to secure a paycheck and obviously the best deal. And the casualty is the potential international exposure that you limit yourself because of it.
Can you imagine Brazil and Argentina saying we only pick local-based players? I
mean, in soccer.
Yeah. Well, I think in rugby they have to pick local-based players.
Brazil will take anybody, mate.
Happy you're in. Zels making his debut for Brazil this weekend. But it is an issue.
For me, doesn't that underpin that the fact is that we love this sport? It's a global sport. But it really lacks considerable resource to underpin and secure people's future, doesn't it?
Completely. And when you are playing 1 plays 2 in the world, 3 plays 4, 5 plays 6 on the same weekend to start your international season, what you want to be saying is the best players in the world from those countries are playing this weekend, and that's the lure of this. It's not a one-off friendly. That's the lure of the series. That's the lure of the Six Nations or the Rugby Championship, and that's why this game has such a following. So as much as we talk about professionalism, there's still so many of these diehard old amateur traditions that are suffocating the game. And a powerhouse like New Zealand, they've managed to get by so long because of their conveyor belt of talent. But they're not as dominant as they were over the last 5 years because they've lost a lot of players. They've had some big retirements now. But if you even think a bloke like Retallick playing in Japan, just to have him in the mix, why wouldn't you want him in the mix?
Totally.
And in a position where they are so short on artillery.
No, I agree. I mean, if you just, and that's my concern with New Zealand, is we're used to seeing quality players come out of that. Admittedly, we haven't kept both eyes on Super Rugby this year. But if I look at a guy like Tupou Vaa'i on the bench for the All Blacks, I mean, the lock stocks that have come out of New Zealand, the Norm Maxwells, the Allies, the Brad Thorns, Chris Jack. I mean, there's tons of guys, great players. Robin Brooke, Ian Jones. I mean, I don't know, it just seems like there's a definite drop-off in the quality of some of those type
Look, they did get away with playing Greg Rawlinson,
DHS old boy, and Troy Flavel. They were all about 6'3", both of them, against the Boks in Durban. Troy had great hair, though.
In Durban and won. And you know what they found out that day? You don't need height against the Boks. You just need some big grunt and muscle.
Knuckles, mate.
Because our tight five went nowhere. We're going to come back to the All Blacks. Obviously,
we'll come back to them.
Yeah, we'll come back to them. The troubles that they may have. They've announced their squad. We'll unpick that. But 1 plays 2, Pretoria, that's our big game. And we don't have the issue of not picking overseas-based players. We have the best available 23 playing for South Africa, the best available 23, playing for Ireland. And what I love about Russ's selection is he's respected this Irish team to say he's put out his World Cup starting 15. 12 of the 15 are there. One is retired, Dwayne Fimmel, and 2 others are injured. So he's saying this is another type final for us. Your thoughts there, gents?
Scotty, look, I mean...
I'm with you again. I'm nervous. I don't know why I should be nervous, because, I mean, I got no dog in this fight. And you know how much I love the Springboks. But then, you know, I'm looking at... I look for the back three, for instance. And this is a question to you guys. You know, Colby, Kirtley, Aronsa, injury, form. We know that Test matches are not won on paper, and this is a very exciting selection. There's something nagging me about cohesion, really is. You know, when a lot of these players are pitched up from the Sushi League, you know, and it's not as easy as switching the light back on. When you think back to the last 3 Test matches that the Boks went through, narrow wins, 1 point, and yet this is an epic encounter, a 2-match series, 1 plays 2, and like I said, I don't know if it's as easy as just going bang.
Well, we
get back into that mode, because you know.
Look, I think anyone expecting that kind of intensity, that kind of cohesion, that happens at World Cups when you build a squad within 6 weeks. Even if you've kind of nursed that squad to that point, it's a tournament on its own, and it's a tournament within a tournament. Of
course it is, and you're judged on the body of work and the reps that you get, and you know, the camaraderie. There's strength in unity. You can amplify all of the understandings through that period, and yet we expect miracles within 2 weeks. The boys come from all over the world into camp 2 weeks before. You know, there's a lot of bite and niggle off the field. There's a little bit of noise about it. 1 plays 2. Obviously, the Leinster and the Munster failing in the playoffs in the URC has caused a little bit of hurt with them. And like I said before, I just think that the game methodology, Farrell's way of playing, takes a lot of energy, you know. And I think, you know, after that hour mark, if you haven't got scoreboard separation, I don't know if there's a default.
So what's making you nervous?
I don't know. Just this weekend, it's almost like it's a new dawn for World Rugby. You know,
I would agree with that.
South Africa, world champions. There's an evolution, and there's a lot of excitement about what this next cycle looks like. I have a feeling that maybe, you know, who's in ascension, and I think that certainly is the Springboks. I just have a feeling that you know, the yield curve is falling off for Ireland. There's a new paradigm in rugby for Wales, for Australia. England seem to feel that they got some kind of settledness to them. And again, we have this unknown package. Brand new coach, 7 years in the making for the All Blacks, much expectation. And yet we look at the team, we go, pieces and weapons. Are they there? Are they not? So this will be down to...
And a coach is only as good as his cattle.
Yeah.
Or her
Correct.
cattle, their cattle.
Correct.
But we've seen that. Loftus, you know, it's one of my favourite grounds. You've played there, Scotty.
Yeah.
I've been there many times. I played there as an 20 bloke when I was in the police force.
Hey.
75th anniversary, yeah.
Sure.
But
It's unforgiving.
it is.
Yeah.
And it really does suck your lungs a little bit if you're not from that area, and especially if you're coming from Cape Town. But a packed Loftus is an incredible experience because of just the rarefied air, what goes on outside the ground, on the fields and that. But there's also a little bit of a myth around how potent the Springboks are there. The All Blacks since 92, when we came back, have won 5 successive tests there. They've beaten us 52-16, 45-26, 34-18. They've smashed us a few times there.
Lucky
bounce from Dan Carter. We go back to 1994. This incredible fervour of the Springboks playing at home, Nelson Mandela, and England smashed us. It took the country to turn on the Boks for them to come back to Cape Town and win 27-9 before they went off to New Zealand. So when you talk about nervousness, there may be that kind of feeling of the expectation is potentially too much from the public, because it's not like you're playing Portugal in your first one up. You're playing the side who beat you at the World Cup. And for all the conspiracy theories, I was flicking through my X account last night as I was trying to put the little beast to bed, and that little segment came up of Rassie speaking to them after the Irish test. You lied to us! You can sing all your songs, English, Xhosa, Afrikaans. They mean nothing. You're not hurting. He was hurting.
Yep.
So while he's kept on saying it wasn't a clutch game for them,
Yeah.
he coached Munster. Jacques coached Munster. They put Munster back on track. They felt they could win in Dublin. They did it 1916, but they were experimenting a bit. They did enough to win that game. They missed 11 points. But that mood of his, that Siya Kolisi is not South Africa. South Africa is South Africa. And they pan to the players, and you just see them looking a little bit disillusioned, a little bit pissed off. But that's not the ramblings of a guy who says this wasn't important to me.
No.
I don't know if you've seen the clip, Scott.
No, I have seen the clip. Yeah.
I mean, he
Because
wants...
you promised me. You promised me.
And it's irritating me.
Yeah.
So...
The difference is, mate, he now has a sword.
He had a sword.
So
He's got
nobody's
2 World Cup
lying.
winning medals.
Nobody's lying
And
this weekend.
I'll say this, nervousness. I've spoken to a lot of, well-heeled rugby South African intelligentsia this weekend, and
Sure.
they feel the same. They feel the same, But that said, listen, for me, it's not the minutes in the game that count, it's the game in the minutes. It's how you apply yourself. And certainly there will be an application, as you know, from the Springboks, but it has to be measured with your tactical game and your technical game. And that's where superiority reigns in international football. And we know what Ireland are going to bring. And I think for a long time, the Boks were the easiest team to watch film, to do the research, to find where you can, find pressure points and apply pressure points. I think now Ireland are more predictable, so they're easier to understand and to maybe unpick.
Look, in the context of South Africa, so there's 2 things for me here. The moment we brought Tony Brown into the mix, it's like everyone's expecting this miracle. They just don't know when, but they're trying to find it at every turn because he is so highly rated. What he did with Japan especially, minimal resources. And listening to Andre Pollard talk in the week, Tony Brown saying, I want to make him the best 10 again in the world, meaning he feels he's not the best 10. Secondly, he could be the best 10 because at under 20 level, he rated him. When he came into the Boks setup, scored 2 brilliant tries against the All Blacks at Ellis Park, playing very flat. It's probably the flattest I've seen a 10 play since Henry Honeyball.
Yeah,
and he looks so
agreed.
effective.
Agreed.
Big boy could take, and you always thought then he can play 12 as well. He's physical enough. He's got a great goal kicking boot. And maybe it was injuries, and maybe it was the way they played, that he went deep into the pocket, and kind of he wasn't asking that many questions of the defense again. So Tony Brown's worked on that aspect of his game. So immediately there would be a bit of doubt in the Ireland side. Is it going to be revealing itself in the first 50 minutes? Is it going to be something that takes 6-7 tests to do? So that's the Tony Brown factor for me is very relevant. But what I enjoy about the selection is they've given Tony Brown effectively their World Cup backline and said, work with it. They haven't given him a bits and pieces backline and said, wait till the Rugby Championship. And then when you go back to Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Nienaber's comments during the World Cup, goal kicking is not important. 48%. We score tries. We win. We went out against Ireland, left 11 points on the grass, and lost it 13-8. He has picked Andre Pollard to start, and he's picked Sasha on the bench. He's picked 2 very good goal kickers. So he's leaving nothing to chance there. He's saying this could come down to a penalty, and if it does, it's the Mornestein example in the Lions series. If it does, and who did they take off in that Lions series? They took off Pollard. Excuse me, had missed 1 kick. Mornestein came on, and who would have thought all those years later he'd bang one over in the last minute to win a series? So
This is how I see it playing out, 100%.
So I see the Pollard selection. We spoke about that last week while I was saying Pollard over Martin LeBlanc.
Yeah.
And I'm chuffed that Sasha's there for the 15, 12, 10 and goal kicking utility. But I think I just look at their team selection and I think it's just a sign of how highly they rate this Irish team and how much respect
It's a
there
marvelous
is for
respect.
it.
Of course it is, yeah.
You know, so all the noise that goes and all the hype, I know, again, I keep on saying, like, a lot of the Irish media are just so serious about it and have a bit of fun, for goodness sake. We've got to hype the game in this country. Eh? Like, I look at the build-up. It's the first time we've ever done a build-up like this outside of the All Blacks, really. And it's like an American-type build-up. You actually are just you're reminded of his historical past. You're reminded of defeats, emotion, and the players are reminded of it. And I think it's great that they've broken that shackle as South African rugby, because it's coming out of the official X feed and their official social media channels. I think it's fantastic that they are saying it's unfinished business.
Of course it is. Of course it is. You know, look at the elation of the those 1 point victories, and then the absolute just magnificent relief of winning and deserving to win in clutch moments. But that cut runs deep from that 13-8 defeat, for sure.
And I'm going to go back again to Pollard, because he wasn't in that 23 for that Irish test. That guy is a test player. He may not always look as flash in the Premiership or in Super Rugby, and you would not necessarily starting for the Barbarians.
But that comes down to zero defect. He prides himself on, looking at the percentages, figuring out very quickly in his head what is the right play to help my team win. And that is the definition of a test match winner.
And I think a guy like Deolandi on his outside gets so much more comfort that Pollard's on his inside.
The whole team.
And also the potential of Faf still being pulled out. And nothing would surprise me that Saturday morning it's like he hasn't recovered.
Yep.
Grant Williams starts and we go in 7-1 on the bench.
Bingo.
That could still happen, okay?
Yeah.
So I think that also influences the thing. You don't pick Faf and Marnie and potentially Faf goes out. Then you've got Grant Williams and Marnie, which it can either go one way. They could run Ireland ragged or they could implode. So I really like the way Pollard was speaking at his press conference. He's so composed. He's so considered. He's got a sense of humor. There's something so much bigger than rugby for him. We keep on saying that. Family man, birth of his child, the way he had to go win that second World Cup. He's never been dropped in his life. He's never not been wanted from the age of 12 as a schoolboy rugby player. And I just see that maturity and the growth, and there's nothing for him to prove anymore. He just wants to go out there and actually show how good he is and enjoy it. And the fact that he's embracing Tony Brown so much and saying, it's wonderful to have his energy here. I'm learning so much again. There's a reinvigoration with that box setup.
Never too young to learn, especially when you've hit the lights out like he has in his career. So this kind of the Tony Brown influence we will see not only with the way the halfbacks do their business, but just how the body language and the shapes emerge as this season goes deeper.
You played 12-13, Scotty, but you're one of the best 12s in your era, and one of the best to have played the game, one of the giants of rugby league as well. What type of 10 would you have wanted on your inside?
Pollard every time. Because you want consistency. You want that player in heated moments thinking quickly with, as you say, ice in his veins. And that's the hallmark of a great player, is that he makes better decisions under pressure consistently. And that is a brain chemical thing. That is a fight or flight response.
Totally.
And when you are assured, there's confidence when you are being put under the pump, that is continuous chatter, and he doesn't go quiet. That's when you know that you have a 9, 10, 12 spine of a backline threat, that under pressure you just make the right decisions to relieve, to pivot, to change. But for me, I think he's been the hallmark of what is good about that position, because it's not an easy position to play fly off. And there's two trains of thoughts, isn't it? You have this kind of, you have this mercurial talent at 10 that doesn't really have the game management, but at the swing of a hips or just a look of an eye can step and create something out of nothing. Or there's consistency. When there's trouble, the ball gets put down there meticulously. Pressure is relieved. Pressure can be applied. When the ball is quick, the right decisions happen. And that's probably where Tony Brown is looking to maybe, tweak a few things to get him right on the front line again. So he creates this kind of soak-up defence from the defensive perspective that he can just, get Faf running offline, get him running on the overs, and then just put in doubt in 12 and 13 as to how do we pick this guy up.
Zels, would it be also you saw him play at under 20 level, at schoolboy level. I mean, he owned the space. There was never a doubt that what he felt he was doing, it's because the instinct, he trusted that. And we've seen many a player over time, that instinct gets coached out of them, or game plans mean they can't kind of follow that. When Tony Brown says, I want to bring him back to where he was, do you think he's talking about, I want to bring back that natural instinct that he backs it again? He's got 2 World Cup wins, titles behind him. Was the player of the year in under 20s. Like I said, he's got nothing to prove. And that's the first time we've heard a coach talk about Pollard's qualities, as opposed to he's a kicker who's going to come in and win you a game. Tony Brown saying, I saw him at under 20 level. I saw him come off the school benches and beat New Zealand at Newlands. Is that the kind of energy that when he talks about a new guy comes in and gives you that acknowledgement of he knows your career, but also he can still improve your career?
Yeah, without sounding patronising. And that's the main thing, because with Pollard, as you said, I think off the field there's balance. There's an understanding of life beyond rugby, which is great. So that gives him the temperament and provides him with the clarity and temperament that any side needs at 10. Is that moment of calm, I've got you guys, don't worry. But the fact is that he doesn't outwardly say, you ask for more than I can give. That's why he is a compliment to the side.
Now he's up against the young Munster man, Jack Crowley. We saw the Burns alternated for Leinster. Everyone felt, especially in this country that I spoke to, it's reporting on them, felt that was an Achilles heel for that great Leinster side. Crowley stepped in. He came off the bench against South Africa, kicked the late penalty. He was magnificent. Player of the match when Munster beat a 14-man Bulls, which took them to the top of the table, ultimately in the URC. He just looks very comfortable in big match moments, and he looks like he is the heir to Johnny Sexton. Your thoughts, Zels, and then we'll go to Scotty for that.
Yeah, I think Crowley's looks like a good prospect. I think what he's got is something reminiscent to what we spoke about now with Pollard. I think he's got ticker. The thing that makes Pollard such a great player is he's a winner. It doesn't really matter what sport you throw that guy into. I'm sure at the kids' dad's race, he's going to be at the front. I think he's just one of those guys that is a winner in his mentality. And I think Crowley's he's got ice in his veins, like Scotty said. He's one of those guys of a similar ilk. And I also don't think Ireland are blessed with the plethora of world-class fly-offs. So I think he's the best of the guys that they've got to choose from. And I think he's proven for Munster that he has value. He is a solid player. Whether that translates to Ireland's success rate remains to be seen. But good player.
Okay, now Gibson Park and Johnny Sexton, a hell of a different kind of feel to it, to KC / Conor Murray and Jack Crowley.
Yeah.
How definitive is that in terms of assessing this Irish 23?
I think it's huge. I think it's huge this weekend. Do not underestimate how much of this could be an Achilles heel. If the said 9 and 12, 9 and 10, we're guessing that it's going to be Crowley. We don't know the Irish selection yet. But again, if that is not on song and on pattern, it could trip up the continuity of, the pivots that I keep talking about. This energy sapping, continuous game, taking it to 20, 25 phases, and notwithstanding altitude at all. I just think it's unsustainable in international rugby. Now, who am I to argue with, one, the strength and conditioning of these guys? No, I'm not saying that for 1 minute. I just think that if you're a tight 5 player and you were making 40 tackles a game and smashing 40 rucks, and you're expected to be part of this continuous pivot play, I think is a lot to ask, especially when you come up against a heavyweight. And whether you look at it by design or default, by design for me, that this mode of play that Leinster and or Ireland adopt, it's for bulked up middleweights. When it come up against a true heavyweight, I think it's too much to ask, because I just see that falling off the cliff at the hour mark. And then if you, as you said, if you haven't got scoreboard separation, then it's toast.
So I was talking about heavyweights. The thing that surprised you, Ricky, and myself,
Yes.
was how comfortably the Bulls set piece handled an Irish pack, a Leinster pack that will have six of those starters, the entire front row, 2 of the back row, and 1 of the locks. How comfortably they handled them in that URC semi-final, destroyed them at set piece. I've never seen Andrew Porter handled like that.
Yeah.
Give me some insights to that. Is there now an expectation on the Boks to bury them? And if they don't, is it because they don't have a Walker Low?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Old Croucho Libre was the key to the Bulls' resurgence this year. That guy's a phenomenal scrum anchor, obviously great player. And I think obviously Francois Lab has proven his weight at tight end. So I don't really know if Ireland have got an answer for the Bok power in the tight 5.
It's something to behold, isn't it? Because, when you look at a scrum, certainly over the last 15 years, where it's a reset. It's a scrum happens because of an error, but the Boks are the only team that have turned it into a powerful weapon
with basically picking 2 packs.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the way we've been wondering, how do you score 35 unanswered points against New Zealand in a test? Pick 2 packs.
Correct.
Don't try and pick 2 backlines to run at them.
Yeah.
Look, the day that referees stop rewarding the Boks for their scrum ascendancy, the whole plan changes because you don't have field position, you don't have your maul, you're not in strike position. It's a whole different game.
But the referees want to reward them.
But the referees want to reward.
I mean, I saw Nigel Owens' comment. It's like, keep the scrum. One of the most revered referees. It's like, it's such an integral part of our game.
We can't devalue it now. No.
And to me, it's like, it's one of those moments that you wait for. It may take 12 minutes for that first scrum, but there's 2 good packs up against each other. Yeah. That first hit just determines everything. It's like, you go back to your playing days, Scotty. When Ollie was my son, Ollie was young, he'd say, how do you immediately pick a team that you think could win? And I'd said, that first double hit tackle on the gain line in the first 2 minutes of the game, I'll know if a team's come to play or not.
Well, you've got to have tone setters, haven't you? Because it's easy to look, and Ireland and the Boks can look around the room and go, we are blessed. We've just got to be on message, on the same page. But it always takes the first player. You want to be that first one that just steps out, sets the tone, that permeates through the team. Because it's never a given that it can happen. And that is the first carry, that is the first at-ruck, it's the first turnover. Whatever that thing is, you want to be the setter.
Well, and I can tell you who will be the setters on Saturday from a South African point of view. Because they're the 2 guys who really speak in the media, and they're the only 2 who have spoken, Damon Deolandi and Eben Etzebeth. In their interviews, at various times, they've spoken about their World Cup game. They've spoken about Damon Deolandi saying this is going to be war. I mean, I've never heard him do an interview, but that's saying to Ireland, I'm going to be up for it. He's come out of the Sushi League, but he's one of those guys who comes back rested and refined.
Well, he's got "fuck you" written all over him.
Completely,
I love it.
Completely. I mean, he is the key, and I think I've said this before. I go back to when Rassie first took over. I wrote an article for independent newspapers at the time about Deolandi, and the word in Afrikaans is etter. It's a derogatory word for mongrel, but it could be cunt,
Yeah, right.
And he said he's from Milnerton High, not from Bishops. I need to show him he's from Milnerton High again. He needs to show me that dog, that mongrel, that makes him the best. Yeah. And that's why he invested in him. And Deolandi, I mean, the family, the brother, you played touch with him. How big is he on that field in terms of composure, influence, and how tough is he as a competitor?
Yeah, I just think his redeeming feature is that you can't stop him with one person. He's always going to go forward. When the Boks beat the British and Irish Lions, Deolandi for me was arguably the player of the tournament for South Africa because they fed him. He kept the pack going forward. He just continually crossed the gain line. Somehow when somebody latches onto him, he kicks into that diff lock and he just drives. And it's 3, 4, 5 meters that puts everyone back on the front foot. So
he has an irrepressible force around him. Really is. And of course, notwithstanding the mongrel, the minerals,
Yeah.
I think he's got a great understanding of his craft, which he's honed over time, and I think he's one of the world's best kept secrets.
The thing
because of what you say.
Yeah.
You know, he never talks about himself. He does his talking on the field. And the fact is that I recognize that there's so many nuances to his game that is complementary to Pollard and to his outside backs.
And you also see, sorry, Scott, when he went and played for Munster for those couple of seasons, when he did play, he just lifted that side.
Oh
he
God.
looked like a test player playing
absolutely.
in a club team.
There were 3 or 4 European, high stakes games where the difference maker was Delendy, hands down. And his level of production, which I think, again, we don't talk enough about, good work rate, production, but do not confuse activity with productivity. The level of production when Delendy's playing is enormous.
Well, if you go back to 2 Welsh games, the one a couple of weeks ago, he replaced Andre the Giant. You just knew there was a change in that mindset in that position, a change in the productivity, not even so much the activity. Then we go back to the 2019 semi-final. That was the Springboks' toughest game at the World Cup. Rassie Erasmus said it. You had a Welsh side who didn't want to play rugby. You had a Springbok side who didn't want to play rugby, and there was huge respect for both. And it was a very good rugby. It was a South African kind of matchup. It felt like a Currie Cup final.
Yeah.
Who was going to give? Pollard kicked that great clutch kick, but it took Delandy's brilliance to pick up a loose ball 20 meters out and somehow beat nearly the whole team.
Drag 3 guys
and
over, yeah.
find a way through footwork, space, and then power. To score. And
Correct.
that try has still never been given the dues from that 2019 World Cup. You know, people talk about the wonderful 2 tries in the final against England, Colby's magnificent step when the game was won. But when you take that playoff game, there were 2 moments in the 2019 playoffs. It was the Maul against Japan when they took it 52 meters and made a statement to the world and killed the whole global audience that was back in Japan on the 26-3 win. And that Delandy moment that won us that semi-final and took us into a final. I think he's a great player. We're very blessed to have him, and there's no like-for-like replacement for him in this country.
No. We can produce guys with power, and we can produce guys that are sexy, but what Delandy can do, and what he has done his whole career, is he's got immense power, elite level power, with incredible short area quickness and great feet. And he can distribute. So it's quite difficult to contain that guy tactically, and then also one-on-one. You're not really... a guy's going to put his head down and go forward. You can brace yourself.
He's got a functional strength that just is you're blessed.
And it's incredible.
It's a biological thing.
2013, when Heineke Meyer came into the Boks, and he 13-14, and he picked Delandy and Jesse Kriel, when John de Villiers was basically playing, not playing. And he said this combination could become the best rugby midfield combination in the world. Jesse Kriel had some injuries. He was played out of position. Lucanio Am came through, had 2 wonderful seasons. But the way Jesse Kriel prospered outside Delandy during that whole World Cup, and just looks so comfortable having a mate from 10 years back there. And I think that comes back to our thing in this country, and Saturday in particular, Scott. Sometimes it takes a decade for it all to happen. We've never had patience.
No, that's right, yeah.
I was watching that island...
And that's the trouble with progress. Progress has no patience. So you always wanted to find the quick fix. What is the emperor's new clothes, new robe? And that's why, you're seeing the fruits of the harvest now, aren't you?
No, completely.
With a lot of the talent. Because it's not only talent and cohesion are coming together. There's a symbiosis now with this midfield. There's a symbiosis... all the way through that back line. There's a symbiosis, in the tight 5. So continuity, consistency, persistence, and this pursuit and relentlessness for, taking it to another level is one of the key tenets that Rassie is trying to underpin.
Well, we've been watching, they've been showing all the Ireland test matches, and which has been wonderful. It's never happened before. It's normally only when the All Blacks are in town. All week you've been seeing all the historic Ireland test matches against South Africa. But glancing up the other day, I was watching the one at Newlands where CJ Stander got sent off for his late charge on Pat Lambie. then you look at Eben Etzebeth, you look at Faf de Klerk, you look at Lut de Jager,
Sia.
Sia Kolisi.
Yeah.
They kids, okay?
Yeah.
We only remember them now as back-to-back winners.
Yeah.
The image of Sia and Eben is the World Cup final against New Zealand 12-11.
Yeah.
But then you look at those boys in 2016. Now, had there not been an investment in them, they may be playing club rugby overseas, maybe have had ancestry and playing for another country because of the stand-down rule. And I was looking at that and thinking, and the media have a huge responsibility as well there, is if a player's good enough as well and there's good communication from the coach, you've also got to allow that player to develop and actually not be burnt at the stake if there's one defeat, or kind of build them up and then kind of break them down.
Isn't this where Wales is at the moment? You know, a totally new dawn. And with this selection, I don't know if I'm excited, confused, or downright terrified. You know, because we are now into a phase in Welsh rugby where there's a lack of genuine international experience, but also with the selections, genuine lack of URC experience. So we are, you know, this is the start of this kind of unknown period for international rugby, because the hierarchy is dominated by 1 and 2. Consistently, we see selection. Consistently, we see consistent performances. From 3 to 10, everybody's in a state of flux. New coaches, you know, new shift of players. Everybody on a different cycle looking at this next World Cup cycle.
Okay, you said that you're a bit terrified there. So,
I'm joking.
I know you are. That's what I'm
joking.
saying. I was going to tell Zels, like, let's give Scotty some calm and ask him to tell the audience his incredible story about touring Australia with Wales.
Yeah, Scotty, let us know. 1991.
Oh, well, when I walked in the office earlier now, Zelly said to me, you know, what's it like? What was the difference? You know, obviously they travel a little bit better than what used to in back in the 90s. And I was saying, well, how it worked in 91 when we traveled to Australia. The boarding passes were issued in alphabetical order. So the cut-off for first class was J, and then the rest of them were in economy, or ecomedy as they call it. So you can imagine now, Jenkins and Gibbs, we had the last 2 seats in first class. Gareth Llewellyn, all 6'8" of him, back in 24 hours to Perth. What made it even more funny is that, you know, when you jump on a plane, the first thing you are provided with is a hot tea towel in a kind of cellophane package, isn't it? And I could see Jinx, you know, was this to go in his mouth, or was it quickly followed by the appetizer, which was, you know, that was the first time any of us had kind of flown right at the front of the plane in Qantas. Shrimps, beautiful shrimps, and I turn around to see Jinx crunching. I could see, like, no, you gotta peel it, take the head off and peel it. So that's how raw we were going to 1991.
Draws the prawns.
So we arrive in this place. We arrive in Western Australia in Perth, a place called beautiful beach town called Cottesloe.
Yeah.
Roofs are leaking, beds are damp, there's bed bugs and so on. I mean, now, you know, you got to tough it out, and it builds character. So the morning after now, we're training on an Aussie rules pitch, as you do in Australia, which is 5 miles away. Ron Waldron said, no, there's no bus. We got to run there. He's been like, well, this was kind of Ron's métier, you know, again, character building. He wanted everybody to be fit. It was all about running. It was all about effort rather than substance, you know. We get to the pitch, we got to do 8 laps of an Aussie rule pitch. Have you fucking seen how long they got before we even touched the ball?
8Ks there, 8 laps and 8Ks back.
So that
And then you got to scrum.
that was the start of our 91 journey of chasing shadows for 6 weeks.
Wow.
Like I said, it didn't go too well.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you didn't have to go on to New Zealand just to kind of finish the tour there.
Yeah.
No, so listen, I put it into context now, is that what I'm trying to say is that it's a new dawn for Welsh rugby. We know what's going on. And I mean, it's not only just Wales that, you know, we are trying to understand what the next 10, 15 years looks like from player participation, player development, and all the good things that we love about this sport. So Wales, Wales, like many countries now, are on a different shift. But just Gatland throws a few new starters. Josh Hathaway on the wing, again, hasn't had much game time with his team Gloucester, I believe. Ben Thomas, exciting young Cardiff Blues back. That's been more of a reliever at 15 and at 12, 13 and 10 behind Tinus de Beer. So again, very little game experience in the URC, and yet thrust into a test match arena in Sydney this weekend.
But is that not an issue when your test starting 10 can't start for his club because a South African is starting for his club? A South African is never going to play for South Africa.
What? South Africa's not going to play? Yeah.
Tinus de Beer is never going to play for the Boks.
No.
He's keeping out the Welsh number 10. Is that an issue for you?
Have a think about it.
No. I listen. This is what I'm trying to get at, is that this is the kind of sink or swim moment, isn't it? The true measure of any good rugby player is how you perform away from home. How do you perform under pressure under the spotlight? Test match debut in Sydney for someone like Ben Thomas doesn't get much harder, does it?
Yeah, maybe.
So this guy, will he get some sleep tonight? Who the hell knows? But the fact is, with that nervousness comes an element of, I think, with youthful exuberance, that you are not jaundiced by a system or a scheme or anything quite yet. You just believe 100% in your talent. And that's what excites me about seeing him at 10.
Well, I hope he gets some prawns.
Hope he isn't the prawn.
Because clearly he's had reps this week now, and Gatland has seen something in the last 2 weeks that he hasn't seen, because you can't be everything to all men where you got eyes on every player. They've identified certain players. They picked Sam Costello as the out and out number 10 to kind of go on this tour.
Love his name, Costello. Eh?
Yeah, and the fact is that there's still a question mark whether he has the chops for international rugby. And you've got to give people the opportunity to develop and really take ownership of a position. Such a pivotal position like number 10. Pollard was afforded it. But, I'm not putting him in the same breath. But exciting times for Wales. And up against a Joe Smith side. And Joe is he's not a raconteur when it comes to dealing with the media. I think he's very, very honest, very succinct. And he said, yeah, we're underprepared, But the fact is that this is an Australian side that has had a lot of Super Rugby minutes against a very inexperienced Welsh side that hasn't had a lot of URC minutes.
Yeah,
that said, though, there's plenty of grunt in the pack for me, with Raffle, with Wainwright, David Jenkins,
Dewey Lake.
If there's an upset, this weekend, 55 years in the making, 1969 since Wales last won a Test match, this is as great an opportunity as any to see it.
Well, Smith will say he can only go up. It was 40 points to 6 at the World Cup. You're our Wallaby correspondent. You've been watching Super Rugby Pacific. I know with that one eye.
There's the teams.
Can you take us through that team? Because
man.
I mean,
this is the inside I love.
You educated us. Can you talk me through that team?
So listen, just before we get to Australia, let me just say this about Wales and just about professional rugby in general. It's not Grey's Anatomy. Not every player needs to have a back rub and a little pep talk, and I'm 99% confident that you could take Sasha Feinberg and Gomez Zulu, fly him back to the World Cup final last year, play him, and he would have a fantastic game, even though he's inexperienced. Some guys do need to be babysat, but some guys are winners from day one, and maybe Ben Thomas is one of those guys. Gatland thinks, this is a guy I can plug in, and he doesn't give a shit whether he's played 6,000 minutes or 6 minutes. He's going to knock somebody out, and those are the guys that you build teams around, and that's what Wales needs. Is somebody to man up, stop apologizing for the fact that they're not South African, New Zealander, Australian, Irish, and just be like, hey, I'm here to play. I can deliver. Give me the ball. Let's go. They need a front man like that. And I think Dan Bigger was that guy for a long time.
Listen, I asked you to speak about the Wallabies
And
team,
so
and now
let's
you
get to the
fall in love
Wallabies.
with the Welsh team again.
No,
Can
no,
you
no.
run us?
That's just my point on that. So listen, Australia, I mean, Joe Schmidt's got a hell of a job there. Like I've mentioned.
Australia, mate.
Australia, mate. He's got to rebuild a team using the dregs of what's left in Australian sport after all those other guys have
But
taken
you know
the
a
best
little bit
players.
about these guys. Give us an opinion. Run us
Tommy
through the
Wright
50.
at fullback.
Your
I'm
favourite
not
player.
sure he would start for Province, but they love him in Australia.
Hammies, would he make it?
Maybe. Seconds have got a gap at fullback. Andy Kellaway, I think, is a nice player. Josh Fluke, relative unknown. Hunter Paisami's back from the wilderness. Filippo Dargunu, however you pronounce his name, solid player. Noah Lalesio was Dave Rennie's...
Lalesio, man.
Whatever. He was Dave Rennie's
Lalesio.
project guy. Nice touches, skill, flair. I don't know whether he's got the temperament for the biggest of stuff. They've been investing in him to come through, and to date, I haven't been convinced, but, you know, what does that mean?
But did Eddie not do him a disservice? Because we take when he played against France in that series at home, and he kicked a clutch kick to win them the series, and he played reasonably well. He had some big games in Super Rugby as well. He was 21 years old, and Eddie basically kicked him into touch. Now, did Eddie get it wrong? If Joe Schmidt has brought him back,
Well, Joe Schmidt must think so.
because you can be a project player at 20, but at 24, 25, you can't really be a project player.
Correct.
You should have come through by then.
Yeah, exactly. Which is an interesting thing. We're going to find out the answer to that question in the series, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Are you surprised in that backline, given what played at the World Cup, what Eddie was picking? Does that give you an insight into, is it a thing of Joe Schmidt says, I basically got nothing, I've got to build, or you guys haven't seen what I see in these players?
No, and also Joe Schmidt has to reward Super Rugby form. I mean, that's the nature of the beast if you're going to be the Wallabies
Move
coach.
us through that tight five. Apparently they are insanely big.
Let me just tell you the
strong.
scrum off. It's Jake Gordon. He's a decent player. Rob Valentini, overachiever. Do like him. Not sure whether he's a test giant, but do like him.
He speaks highly of you, mate. I must tell you that.
Fraser McWright. Liam Wright. I don't know if he's related to Tom.
He's a captain, isn't he?
Yeah, he is the captain. Salakai Loto and Jeremy Williams, the rookies at lock. Tupou and Slipper are the props, and Matt Fassler, in the absence of the great Dave Parecki, is the hooker.
Okay, so give me a score.
Listen.
Not even a score, just give me a points differential. And just
Well,
say
I've got to
it.
qualify why I'm going to say this. I can't just give you a score and be like, let's go.
You got 30 seconds.
Okay, this is what I'm going to say about this. I feel like Wales and England, history is there for a reason. You don't just win overseas in these countries. But I'm not sure that Wales and England are going to have a better opportunity to win in Australia and New Zealand than they have this week, despite the fact that Wales don't have a lot of cohesion. Both of those teams are in rebuild phase under new coaches. I feel like Wales can win this game. And I feel like England can beat the All Blacks.
We'll get to England now, but Wales, give me a score.
I'm going to give you a margin of victory.
That's all, margin of victory. Let's
I'm
go
going to give you a
margins.
margin of victory for Wales.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Wales take this thing by 3 points.
Scotty?
Yeah,
Wales?
I'm the same. I think it's tight. I don't think Wales are going to score a hatful of points, and I don't see Australia, racking up the scoreboard, and that's why. I don't know. I think it's something in me, and I can't rationalise what my head and my heart is saying.
Score
I'm just saying,
differential?
19-16 to Wales.
Also 3. So you guys are,
Yeah.
you chatted outside, eh? 3
Definitely.
points all. Well, I'm going with Australia.
Of course you are.
12 points.
Yeah, and,
Love it.
but
Love it.
but I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Totally.
Because you're always been the harbinger of kind of reality. And the reality
Man, I've
is
never
that-
heard anybody say that about this guy. I think he's just excited about Andre's brother, Billy Pollard, playing hooker for
I can't believe there's another
Australia.
Pollard in Test rugby.
Yeah.
Eh? Can he kick?
You can, mate. Might not be a ball, though.
Be great Pollard on Pollard, eh?
Yeah.
In the rugby championship.
Superb.
We have to keep an eye on Australia more so than anything else because we play them in the rugby championship. We play them away from home. We play them in Perth and we play them in Brisbane.
Can't win there,
and
mate.
we've won 5 out of 30 since 1993. So there's a healthy dose of respect for me about Australia in Australia. Not so much when they come here, they get pumped.
Yeah.
I did call them pussies 2 years ago and was hugely embarrassed because they came out and beat us 2 tests in a row. And as all the ex-players said, who's the pussy now? Well, it was South Africa. It was me. I apologized. I kind of banned myself from Twitter back then for about 2 days. Wrote heaps of columns just praising the Wallabies and how wonderful they were. And then actually
And they never recovered from it.
And they never recovered, eh?
Yeah.
It was part of my master plan for the implosion. Got Eddie back, and that was the end of them, okay? Okay, so we've dealt with that one. Argentina, we're going to 30 seconds. Argentina against the Academy French side. All the pressure on Argentina because they should win it comfortably. They probably won't.
Argentina, France, I think it'll be Gallic temperament will overtake. It'll be a crazy game, and I see it as a kind of one of those high point margins of victory for Argentina.
Argentina.
Yeah, 4 yellow cards. Argentina win by 5.
Like a 42-31 kind of game.
I don't think it's going to be a high score. I think it'll be messy. One of those. You know how it is in Argentina.
So you two are disagreeing on something there.
Yeah, finally.
Finally. We go back to the big one in South Africa. It's 5:05 kickoff. It's 1-2 plays each other. World champions against Six Nation champions. The only team that beat the Springboks at the World Cup, 13-8 in Paris. Loftus. Ireland against the Springboks. Who wins this? Give me a score, and then we'll know what the differential is.
Ireland by 20. No,
I like the way you think.
I've got the Springboks to win a close game, 23-18.
You got them by 5.
Yeah, I'm the same. I got the Boks by 5 or 7 points. I just think that they will put the throat on at some point late in the game and then finish strongly.
All right, I've got the Boks by 12. A late try, by the way. So I'd also have them in single figures. Got them by 12. The one we actually didn't call, but we're going to call it now. New Zealand against England. Give me a points differential.
I got the All Blacks by 5. I think England will put a very impressive showing, but just not quite enough to get them over the finishing line.
This week, I was feeling bullish about a big win for the All Blacks against England. I've seen New Zealand's team now. England's bench is porous, so the All Blacks' chance to win this thing is at the end, but I'm going to say England take this by 2 points.
England take about 2. I've got the All Blacks to win by 8. There's no science attached to that. There's no form barometer. I just don't like England. So I'm going with the All Blacks.
Keep it real.
It's been great. Zels, Scotty, we'll chat again on Monday when finally we'll have matches to chat about and we will have some form of form going into the second
Form
test.
and substance that can maybe unpick what next weekend looks like, because it could be an historic weekend.
Or it could be business as usual for the
Yes.
South.